I'm a 39-year-old woman, single mom to my daughter, Alara, who just turned 15. I've raised her on my own since the day she was born. No dramatic custody battles or deadbeat dad stories. He was never in the picture, and that's never been the hard part. The hard part has always been my own mother, Celeste. Celeste is the kind of woman who says things like back in my day unironically. She believes people should go to college, get a traditional job, marry young, and prioritize appearances. Anything outside that makes her uncomfortable. I didn't follow her path. I built my own, and for that, she's never stopped quietly punishing me. I'm the executive director of a private think tank focused on sustainable urban development. We design long-term plans for cities to be more resilient, green infrastructure, emergency logistics, climate policy, that kind of work. It's not glamorous, but it's high impact. Celeste doesn't understand any of it. She tells people I work on my laptop all day like I'm just playing games. If someone asks what I do, she'll either change the subject or say something like, oh, she's always doing some online thing. She never really settled. For years, I brushed it off. It used to bother me, but I got used to it. I stopped correcting her, let her run her mouth. But recently, something shifted. It wasn't about me anymore. Alara's growing up. She's smart, observant, the kind of teenager who actually listens. She doesn't just take things at face value, she asks questions. And for most of her life, I've worked hard to protect her from the weird, cold dynamic between me and Celeste. I never wanted her to inherit that baggage, but I slipped. I let my guard down. Celeste asked to visit for the weekend. She said she wanted to bond with Alara, and even though every part of me screamed no, I said yes. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the fact that Celeste is Alara's only living grandparent. Maybe I just wanted to see if there was something left worth salvaging. The first night was fine. Awkward, but fine. We had dinner, watched a movie. Celeste kept her comments subtle. I thought maybe, just maybe, it would be okay. The next morning, I went out early to grab coffee. There's a small cafe 2 blocks from my house, and I figured I'd give them some alone time. I came back through the side door like I always do when I've got my hands full. I wasn't trying to sneak in, I just didn't expect to hear what I did. I stopped when I heard voices in the kitchen. Celeste was talking to Alara in that fake soft voice she uses when she thinks she's being wise. She said, your mother wasted her potential. She could have had something real, but she chose to play pretend with strange jobs and big ideas. She thinks she's important, but she's just hiding from real life. It felt like someone slammed the air out of my chest. I didn't go in. I stayed where I was, completely still. I couldn't see them, but I could hear everything. Alara didn't respond. No outrage, no defense, not even a question, just silence. And that silence, God, that silence hurt more than if she had agreed. I backed away, went around to the front, and made sure they heard the door when I came in. I walked in with a smile, holding 2 coffees like nothing had happened. Celeste looked up, all polite and sweet. Alara gave a small nod and stared at her cereal like it had something to say. That night, Alara didn't come downstairs for our usual movie. She stayed in her room. I didn't push. I sat in the kitchen alone, just staring at the wall. I wasn't just angry, I was ashamed. It's ashamed that I let that woman have a moment alone with my daughter. It's ashamed that I didn't say anything. But I wasn't going to fix it with an argument. Celeste thrives on confrontation. She twists every raised voice into evidence that she's the victim. I wasn't going to play that game. So I made a decision. The following week, I had a major event scheduled. Our think tank had been working on a multi-year infrastructure plan with several international cities, and the launch event was being held downtown. It was a closed-door, high-level gathering, delegates, mayors, engineers, funders. The kind of room where Celeste wouldn't survive 5 minutes without exposing herself. I arranged for Alara to come with me. Got her a visitor's pass, cleared her through security, and told her to dress smart. She asked why, but I just told her she'd find out soon enough. This wasn't about showing off. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Alara had heard one version of her mother, now she was going to see the real one. No speeches, no corrections, no arguments. Just the full picture. I was done defending myself with words. It was time to let reality speak. The morning of the event, I handed Alara the blazer and dress pants we had bought months ago for a school competition that got canceled. She stared at me like I just told her we were going to space. I told her to wear them, tied my hair back, and grabbed the tote I keep for days like this. We were out the door by 7:30. The drive downtown was quiet, not the kind of silence that meant something was wrong, just slow. Alara kept glancing out the window, then at her phone, then back out the window. No music, no chatter, just city traffic and the hum of the AC. When we pulled up, she sat up straighter. The building was glass and concrete, surrounded by metal barriers, a few press vans, and security near the main entrance. She leaned forward and looked at the ID scanner at the front gate, then at the badge I handed over. I didn't say anything. Once we parked, one of my staffers was already waiting with a clipboard and a temporary badge for Alara. They gave her a quick rundown. No phones in the meeting rooms, clearance levels, who's who on the schedule. Alara nodded but didn't say much. She stuck close as we passed through security. Metal detectors, bag scans, ID confirmation. She kept checking around, taking it all in. Inside, the walls were lined with screen projections, energy grids, climate forecasts, satellite imaging. She stopped for a second to read a graphic about rising coastal flood zones in Southeast Asia. Then we kept walking. The main conference room was already filling up. Delegates from 8 countries, a few state reps, 2 city mayors, and a few people from the World Bank. The table was rectangular, with my seat marked by a printed nameplate and a tablet already loaded with my notes. When I stepped in, a few people stood to greet me. Someone waved from across the room. Another person asked about a data model I'd reviewed last night. I introduced Alara as my daughter and asked one of our team members to bring her a seat behind me. She sat quietly, eyes moving from screen to screen, person to person. When the presentation began, I didn't ease into it. No long welcome, just the numbers. I phase deployment timelines. Projected reductions in urban heat, Infrastructure scalability. Our Tokyo pilot. She kept looking between the digital model on the screen and the team's simulation tools on the tablets. After about 20 minutes, I handed off to our lead engineer. While she spoke, a European delegate leaned over and said the logistics model I'd introduced had completely shifted the room. Alara overheard. She didn't turn her head, but I saw her shoulders shift slightly like she was sitting taller. When the session ended, there was applause. Not polite clapping. Real, engaged approval. 3 people asked for immediate follow-ups. One delegate called the model the backbone of urban evolution. Someone from the UN department asked for our framework files. Alara stayed quiet through all of it, eyes locked. No slouching, no zoning out. When it was over, she walked beside me while we moved through the backstage corridors. I showed her the real-time simulations we use, climate impact projections, emergency reroute schematics, and part of our South American redevelopment partner plans. She asked if all of that was running live. It was. I showed her where we store the data and how we verify the integrity through third-party networks. At lunch, we sat at the executive dining floor. Minimalist setup, view of the river, full access buffet. She took a plate of pasta and some steamed vegetables, then sat across from me. That's when she finally said something. Not dramatic or heavy, just you're kind of a big deal. I told her not really. She rolled her eyes, smiled a little, and started asking more questions. How I got into this field, what I studied, what made me pick this over something with more flash. She wanted names of places I'd worked with, projects I'd helped build, what cities had used our blueprints. I answered every question. The ride back was different. She didn't look at her phone. She asked if I'd ever been scared speaking in front of so many important people. I told her I'd let her know next time. She laughed. Then she went quiet again, but this time it wasn't cautious. It was thinking. When we got home, Celeste was sitting on the couch flipping through a home catalog. Her voice was all sweet and fake, wanted to know how our day went. I didn't even get a word out. Alara walked right past her, dropped her bag near the stairs, and said, "It was eye-opening. You should really stop talking about things you don't understand." Then she disappeared into her room like nothing happened. Celeste froze mid-page, blinked. It looked like she was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I took off my shoes, grabbed a bottle of water, and started answering emails. That moment didn't need an explanation. It didn't need a fight. She gave her opinion in the kitchen. Alara gave her answer in real time. And that was the end of that conversation. About a week after the event, Celeste sent a text inviting us to dinner at her house. No apology, no mention of anything that happened. Just a smiley face and a line about having a nice evening together. Alara read it over my shoulder and said it straight. She's pretending like nothing happened. I agreed, but I said yes anyway. I was curious how she'd behave now that the old tactics didn't work. We arrived right at 6. Her dining table was already set, cloth napkins, candles, the works. She wore one of her pearl cardigans, the kind she saves for holidays or family events she insists on managing. Alara sat beside me, arms crossed, her face neutral but clearly done playing along. Celeste started with surface-level questions. Asked Alara how school was going, if she was still drawing in her sketchbook, if she had thought about taking up piano again. No mention of the last 2 weeks. No sign she knew Alara had seen anything different now. Dinner was grilled salmon, steamed vegetables, and a salad with dried cranberries. Classic Celeste. Too perfect, too planned. I thanked her for the meal. Alara didn't say much. About halfway through, between bites, Celeste dropped it. She said it like a compliment, casual, offhand, that it was good I had finally settled into something stable, that I used to chase strange ideas. But this was something she could understand. She gestured toward Alara like she was part of the proof. I didn't respond. I cut into my salmon and kept chewing. But Alara set her fork down. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't get emotional, just looked straight at Celeste and said my life wasn't something I settled into, that Celeste never knew what I was doing, and she still didn't. Celeste gave one of those fake little laughs she does when she doesn't know what to say. Then she called it teenage dramatics, said something about hormones and how young people think they know everything. I stayed calm and told her no. Alara simply sees the truth now and she's confident enough to say it. Alara pushed her plate forward. Not aggressive, it's just done. She looked at Celeste and told her she could say whatever she wanted, but she didn't get to define me anymore. Not for her, not for anyone. Celeste went quiet. The smile faded. Her voice dropped low when she said I'd turned Alara against her, like it was some kind of plot. I looked at her and said she did that all by herself. I stood up. Alara followed. No yelling, no dramatic storm out, just a clear, clean ending to something that had dragged on too long. In the car, Alara buckled her seatbelt and told me she wanted to study engineering. She said she wanted to build something real, like I do. I didn't respond with a speech. I just drove. That night, after Alara went to bed, I logged into the school portal. Celeste had been listed as an emergency contact since kindergarten. I removed her. No email, no text, no announcement. I didn't block her number. I didn't send some final message. I just moved on. She still tries sometimes. A text here, a forwarded photo there. I don't reply. She's not blocked, but she doesn't get access anymore. Alara didn't ask why we never heard from her again. She didn't need to. The silence after dinner said more than any long talk could. The next week, Alara asked me to help her research pre-college engineering camps. She printed out application forms, watched videos, started mapping out goals. I saw her sketching blueprints in her notebook instead of doodling. Not because I pushed, because something had clicked. She understood that night that I wasn't just someone who worked on a laptop all day. She saw what it looked like to lead, to contribute, to create. We didn't talk about Celeste after that, not because we were avoiding it. There was just nothing left to say. That dinner wasn't a fight. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a shift. The moment when the story stopped being hers to tell. And from that point on, we started writing our own. 2 weeks later, I hosted a formal dinner for a sustainable city initiative we'd been working on for over a year. Delegates from 2 countries were flying in, plus senior engineers, funders, and policy advisors. The event was private, catered, and invitation only. Alara asked if she could help coordinate. It was her idea to attend, not mine. I set her up with a name badge, a copy of the program, and assigned her to assist our logistics team with seating and guest flow. By 6:45, the space was filled. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the river. Project mock-ups were displayed on easels. There was soft music, a curated dinner menu, and small clusters of people talking near the bar. I was mid-conversation with a rep from the Netherlands when I caught the shape of someone stepping through the main entrance. It was Celeste. Hair done, lipstick on, holding a small clutch like she belonged there. She looked around as if she were early for a reunion. She spotted me, walked straight over like nothing was off. She claimed she heard about the dinner through a family member and assumed it was a casual gathering, even though it was clearly invitation only. I didn't ask who told her. I already had a guess, and it didn't matter. I didn't make a scene, just nodded and introduced her to the nearest waiter, told him to get her a seat, but not near the main table. Alara was across the room, checking the seating chart, and when she saw Celeste, she glanced at me. I gave her one short nod. Celeste started making rounds almost immediately. She inserted herself into a group discussing water infrastructure in Southeast Asia and asked if any of it was profitable. Then she interrupted one of my engineers to ask if climate change was really as bad as the news made it sound. One of my colleagues leaned over and asked who she was. I said, family, not involved. Please don't engage deeply. He got the message and walked off. I found Alara trying to steer Celeste away from a pair of European guests. Celeste brushed her off and told her grown-ups were talking. Alara didn't argue. She just stepped aside. It didn't stop there. Celeste approached one of our key foreign partners, someone who'd flown in from Berlin, and told him I'd always been dramatic. Said I liked being the smartest person in the room. He smiled, excused himself politely, then pulled me aside and repeated it word for word. That was it. I called one of our logistics staffers and asked him to escort her to the foyer. I met her there. I didn't argue or explain, just told her, clearly, she was leaving. She accused me of trying to erase her from Alara's life. I told her she did that on her own. I turned to the staffer and told him to make sure she got to her car. Then I walked back inside and continued hosting. The room never knew what happened. Later that night, once the guests were gone and we were packing up equipment, Alara looked at me and said it was hard to watch, but she was glad I didn't pretend anymore. Celeste didn't follow up. No apology, no excuse, no call. She knew. The next day, I called my cousin and told her not to share anything about my events going forward. She apologized and promised she wouldn't. I believed her. That weekend, Alara and I talked over breakfast. She asked why I let Celeste come. I told her I didn't, but now Celeste had seen this wasn't her world anymore. There were no long speeches, no final blow-up, just a quiet, clean cutoff. She wasn't pushed out. She just didn't fit in anymore. My Uncle Martin emailed me about some updates regarding the family estate. It wasn't anything urgent, just adjustments to paperwork, shifting property into trust. At the end of the message, he mentioned that Celeste was trying to change her will to cut me out completely. Her reason apparently was disrespect. I never expected anything from her, so it didn't change anything for me. But it told me one thing: she hadn't moved on. She was still rewriting the same tired story. Martin also said she'd been calling around, telling relatives I'd brainwashed Alara, claimed I'd filled her head with lies to turn her against family. Some people nodded along, but most didn't take it seriously. Martin said the stories didn't even line up. One week she claimed I was unstable. The next she said I was using Alara to make myself look successful. None of it stuck. He ended the email with a warning, not a dramatic one. Just said to keep an eye out, she was reaching, and people who reach tend to grasp at anything. That weekend, Alara and I were cleaning out the attic. We were digging through old storage boxes looking for one of her childhood sketchbooks she wanted to include in her application portfolio. She opened a box behind a stack of books and found something unexpected, a dusty plastic bin filled with old photos, press clippings, and certificates. My name was on almost all of them. There were photos from my early fieldwork years, me in a hard hat next to a flood prevention model in New Orleans, shaking hands with a city planner in Vancouver, and a press photo from a local paper calling me a rising mind in urban resilience. None of it was ever on display. Celeste had hidden them away. Alara held up one of the pictures. It was me at a groundbreaking ceremony, hard hat and blazer on, standing beside a team of engineers. She looked at the date, then at me, then back at the photo. She didn't ask why it was hidden. She already knew. We took everything downstairs, spread it all out on the dining table. Alara sorted it into categories: events, awards, projects, publications. I didn't say much. She was already opening a fresh binder and punching holes in sheet protectors. She told me she wanted to include the binder in her STEM camp application. Said it wasn't just about where she was going, but where she came from. She also asked for help with her personal essay. The draft was already titled, "Leading When No One Believes in You, Celeste Tried Again." Martin texted me later in the week. Celeste had called him asking if he would help mediate a family conversation. Said things had gone too far and we needed to bring everyone together and talk it out. Martin told her no, said flat out, she broke it. She doesn't get to control the narrative anymore. A few days later, Celeste sent a group message to extended family claiming I was manipulating Alara and isolating her from everyone. I didn't respond. Neither did anyone who mattered. After that, I went into Alara's school account and made it official. Celeste was removed from every point of contact. She couldn't pick her up, couldn't access reports, couldn't reach out through admin. That door wasn't closing. It was bolted shut. I told Alara I'd made the change. She nodded, said she didn't want Celeste confusing things again. That was the last we said about it. We boxed up the binder and set it on her bookshelf. Her future was already underway, but her foundation had been reclaimed. Nothing Celeste tried to hide could stay buried. After that, we stopped bringing her up. Not out of hate, just because she wasn't part of the story anymore. Alara got the call on a Thursday afternoon. She'd been shortlisted for an interview with a leadership-focused STEM program, one of those highly competitive international camps that only takes a small number of students from each country. The interview was scheduled for Saturday. She asked if I could come with her. I cleared my calendar without hesitation. We drove to the interview site early. The location was a university research building downtown, quiet on weekends but set up with panels and displays for the day. She wore a light blue blazer, carried a folder with her resume, essay, and the binder we'd built together. Inside, she met with a 3-person panel, 2 researchers and a program director from the Netherlands. I waited in the hallway. The interview ran 25 minutes longer than scheduled. When she walked out, one of the mentors followed behind her and shook my hand, told me she was the kind of candidate who would elevate the program, not just attend it. 3 days later, her acceptance letter arrived. The email said she'd been selected, and she'd also been awarded a partial scholarship. The program was hosted in the Netherlands with projects running across Germany, Denmark, and Belgium. She'd be gone for 6 weeks. That night, we went out to dinner. No balloons, no fuss. Just her favorite pizza place and a soda toast across the table. She raised her glass and said, "We built this together." Around the same time, I got a message from one of my former collaborators. He was now consulting for a European urban planning group based in Switzerland. They were forming a new task force on long-range infrastructure and invited me to apply. The schedule overlapped with the final 2 weeks of Alara's camp. I hesitated. Flights, hotels, solo schedules, everything would be tight. I sat down to talk logistics with Alara. She didn't blink. She opened a new calendar tab, pulled out a notepad, and helped me map it out. She said I should go. She'd finish her camp, and we'd meet up after. Simple. We planned out the flights. Booked early trains between cities. She helped me pick the dates. It wasn't about separating, it was about moving forward, side by side, even if not in the same place. While we were planning, a cousin messaged me a screenshot. Celeste had been talking again, this time in some family group chat I wasn't part of. She claimed Alara was being dragged across the globe with no roots and that I was robbing her of a real life. The message had no likes, no replies. Just sat there, ignored. It didn't matter. Celeste had no numbers, no contacts, no access. Her words didn't carry weight anymore. I updated my will that same week. Everything I owned, savings, investments, property, went to Alara. The rest was designated for community organizations we'd worked with. Nothing left for the past to claim. After her acceptance, Alara was invited to help mentor middle school girls at a local STEM club. She didn't wait to be told how to do it. She started sketching out workshop ideas, bridge models, clean energy demos, coding challenges. She wanted them to know it was possible to lead, even young. A month later, I was nominated for a regional award in civic innovation. The ceremony was black tie. Alara came with me in a tailored blazer, hair pulled back, binder in her bag, just in case anyone asked about her own projects. At the podium, I didn't talk about struggles. I talked about direction. I said legacy isn't about inheritance, it's about who sees you when it matters, and who you raise to carry the work forward. After the event, while walking to the car, Alara said Celeste was wrong about me. Then added, weirdly, that Celeste helped her see the truth faster. She wasn't wrong. Celeste didn't break me. She just showed me where not to look for validation. My daughter is my legacy. And together, we're already building something bigger than anything Celeste ever had the vision to understand. The airport was crowded that morning. People rushed by with suitcases, announcements echoed overhead, but Alara sat still beside her gate. She wore her travel jacket, headphones resting around her neck, and held her STEM camp packet in one hand. I leaned in, told her she'd do great. She nodded once and walked toward the boarding line without looking back. 3 hours later, I boarded my flight to Switzerland. The consulting work was intense, urban planning across 4 regions, multilingual teams, non-stop meetings. I stood on a stage in Zurich, delivered my first keynote, then met with press afterward. Articles were printed the next week. I sent Alara a photo of one. She sent back a picture of her team holding a structural prototype they built from recycled materials. Weeks passed, no calls from Celeste, no interruptions. Not because she was blocked, but because there was nowhere left for her to reach. Alara messaged me updates every few days, lab results, blueprints, group photos. One day, a mentor praised her work ethic in front of the entire camp. Her reply? A photo of her dirty lab coat and the line, "We earned this." We met in Spain at the end of both our programs. She ran up to me at arrivals, hair windblown, backpack slipping off one shoulder, talked so fast the sentences tumbled over each other. The stories didn't need to be translated. Her smile told the whole thing. One evening, we sat by the beach with paper cups of ice cream. The sky was turning gold. She asked if I thought Celeste ever realized she was wrong. I told her it didn't matter anymore. She nodded and didn't bring it up again. 2 days before we flew home, she showed me a letter. It had arrived at her school weeks earlier, forwarded to the program's mailing center. Celeste's handwriting on the envelope, she hadn't opened it, said she didn't need to. Tossed it into the nightstand drawer and never mentioned it again. When we got home, everything moved fast. I returned to work. Alara got early admission to a top engineering school after they reviewed her summer research portfolio. She accepted immediately. She also joined a local youth outreach group, volunteering at middle schools, helping girls explore STEM fields. I started hosting monthly salons for young women leaders. No speeches, just open conversation. Our house was full of planning boards, models, and notebooks again. We didn't talk about Celeste. Not out of avoidance. She just didn't belong in the story anymore. One day, a cousin texted to say Celeste had moved to a smaller town. Said she'd stopped talking to most of the family. I saw the message. Didn't reply. Alara asked once if I missed having a big family. I told her everything I needed was right here. Years ago, my mother told my daughter I was a failure. But my daughter saw the truth. And truth doesn't always need a defense. Sometimes it just needs to be lived out loud.